What if the beacon of hope was extinguished? Imagine a world shrouded in darkness where the hero we knew becomes the harbinger of chaos. What if Monkey D. Luffy, the aspiring pirate king, the champion of freedom, became the very thing he swore to fight? This is not a tale of the straw pirate's grand adventures, but a descent into a chilling alternate reality. A reality where laughter turns to menacing silence and dreams of a boundless sea become a nightmare of tyrannical rule. This is a story of what happens when a hero's heart turns cold, when the weight of ambition crushes the bonds of friendship, when the world cowers under the iron fist of a once beloved captain. This is the saga of Pirate Emperor Luffy, the scourge of the Grand Line. Prepare yourself, for the journey ahead is fraught with betrayal, despair, and the echoing silence of a world stripped of its freedom. The man who promised to become the king of the pirates will rise to power, but his reign will be one forged in darkness, a stark contrast to the joyous camaraderie he once embodied. This is the One Piece, but not as we know it. Every journey begins with a single step. A choice made, a path taken, alters destiny. For Luffy, the loss of Shanks was that moment. His dreams began to change. The world became a brutal arena. Shanks' death planted a seed of darkness. Luffy's quest for power began. He sought control to protect his loved ones, but the path led to darkness. The flame of his spirit flickered with a sinister light. The straw hat, once a symbol of joy and adventure, becomes a heavy crown. Its weight bears down on Luffy, a constant reminder of his promise and his pain. The carefree smile that once lit up his face is replaced by a grim line. His laughter, once infectious and pure, takes on a hollow, almost cruel edge. The change in Luffy doesn't happen overnight. It's a slow, insidious transformation, like rust eating away at iron. He becomes more ruthless, more willing to use force to get what he wants. He justifies his actions by clinging to the belief that he's doing it for the sake of his crew, for the sake of fulfilling Shanks' dream. But deep down, a part of him revels in the power he's amassing. The crew, initially oblivious to the shift in their captain, remains loyal. They follow his lead, blindly trusting in the boy who once promised them a grand adventure. But as the darkness in Luffy grows, so too does the unease within the crew. Zoro, ever perceptive, is the first to notice the change. He sees the cold glint in Luffy's eyes, the ruthlessness with which he dispatches his enemies. Nami, ever practical, starts to question Luffy's motives, his single-minded pursuit of power. Usopp, the crew's heart, is the most affected. He sees the hero he idolized slipping away, replaced by something dark and unrecognizable. His attempts to bring back the old Luffy, the one who valued friendship and laughter above all else, are met with cold indifference. A rift begins to form within the Straw Hat Pirates, a rift that threatens to shatter the very foundation of their bond. The journey to become Pirate King has begun, but it's a journey paved with shadows and stained with the blood of those who dare to stand in Luffy's way. The Grand Line, a treacherous sea of adventure and opportunity, becomes Luffy's proving ground. He throws himself into every challenge, every battle, with a ferocity that borders on madness. His devil fruit powers, once a source of amusement and wonder, become a weapon of terror. He straddles and contorts his body in grotesque ways, his attacks becoming increasingly brutal and merciless. The crew witnesses firsthand the consequences of Luffy's transformation. They watch in horror as he lays waste to entire fleets, his enemies crushed beneath the weight of his ambition. The Jolly Roger of the Straw Hat Pirates, once a symbol of hope and defiance, becomes a harbinger of destruction. The weight of their captain's actions weighs heavily on the crew. Sanji, his cheerful demeanor replaced by a haunted look, struggles to reconcile the Luffy he knew with the monster he sees before him. Chopper, his innocent heart broken, retreats further into himself, terrified of the rage that simmers beneath Luffy's surface. Robin, ever the observer, watches with a detached curiosity, intrigued by the darkness that has taken root in Luffy's soul. The crew is divided. Some, like Zoro, remain fiercely loyal, convinced that Luffy's heart is still in the right place, even if his methods are questionable. Others, like Nami and Usopp, begin to distance themselves, their faith in their captain shaken Agen. Taken shaken Gagini, shaken Bob Vichikahor, shaken Will, Savum Harold Yos. The once unbreakable bond of the Straw Hat Pirates begins to fray, threatening to unravel completely under the strain of Luffy's ambition. The Grand Line, a place where dreams are made and broken, becomes a crucible for the Straw Hat Pirates, testing their loyalty and forcing them to confront the darkness that lurks within their captain. As Luffy's power grows, so too does his infamy. Word of his exploits, his ruthlessness, and his unwavering ambition spreads like wildfire across the Grand Line. He becomes a legend whispered in hushed tones, a force to be reckoned with, both feared and revered. Pirates flock to his banner, drawn to his strength and the promise of power. He amasses a vast fleet, composed not of the ragtag group of misfits he once sailed with, but of hardened criminals, cutthroats, and mercenaries, all eager to claim a share of the loot and glory that follow in Luffy's wake. The Marines, once a minor annoyance, become Luffy's primary target. He sees them as obstacles in his path, obstacles to be crushed without mercy. He relishes in the thrill of battle, the feeling of his power surging through his veins as he lays waste to entire Marine battalions. Smoker, his determination to capture Luffy, fueled by a growing sense of dread, finds himself outmatched at every turn. He watches in horror as Luffy, his eyes glowing with an eerie light, unleashes devastating attacks, his haki flowing like a torrent of darkness. Garp, Luffy's own grandfather, torn between his duty and his love for his grandson, can only watch in despair as the boy he once knew transforms into the very thing he swore to fight against. Luffy's rise to power is swift and brutal. He carves a bloody path through the Grand Line, leaving a trail of destruction and despair in his wake. The world holds its breath, bracing for the storm that is to come, as the once joyful pirate captain transforms into a tyrant, his heart consumed by darkness. The Grand Line, once a tapestry of vibrant cultures and diverse islands, begins to buckle under the weight of Luffy's tyranny. Islands that once welcomed pirates with open arms now shutter their windows and bar their doors at the mere mention of the Straw Hat's name. The once bustling and yelling trading routes from Wadaos fall silent, choked by the fear that permeates the sea. Luffy, consumed by his quest for power, becomes blind to the suffering he inflicts. He demands absolute loyalty from his crew and his subjects, crushing any hint of dissent with an iron fist. The laughter and camaraderie that once defined the Straw Hat Pirates are distant memories, replaced by a chilling silence punctuated by the crack of whips and the screams of the disobedient. The crew, their spirits broken, are forced to confront the monster they helped create. Zoro, his loyalty stretched to the breaking point, questions the path they've taken, the darkness that has enveloped their captain. Nami, haunted by the suffering she witnesses, grapples with the guilt of her own complicity. Usopp, His hope, flickering like a dying ember, clings to the belief that somewhere deep down, buried beneath layers of rage and ambition, a glimmer of the old Luffy remains. The world watches in horror as the once joyful pirate captain descends further into darkness, his reign of terror leaving an indelible scar on the Grand Line. The line between hero and villain blurs, and the world braces for the inevitable day when the monster within Luffy fully consumes the man he once was. News of Luffy's transformation reaches even the distant shores of the East Blue, the sea where his journey began. The people he once considered friends and allies are now faced with the horrifying truth of his tyranny. The once bright memories of his carefree spirit and infectious laughter are tainted by the knowledge of the monster he has become. Kobe and Helmeppo, now rising stars in the Marines, are forced to come to terms with the fact that the person they once admired, the person who inspired them to pursue justice, has become a symbol of fear and oppression. Their youthful idealism is shattered as they grapple with the impossible task of stopping the man who once called them friends. In Fuchsia Village, Luffy's hometown, the news of his transformation is met with disbelief and denial. Makino, the barmaid who once served him sake and listened to his dreams, refuses to believe the stories, clinging to the memory of the kind and compassionate boy she knew. But even her unwavering faith is tested as the shadows of Luffy's tyranny stretch across the Grand Line, threatening to engulf the world in darkness. The world that once celebrated Monkey D. Luffy as a hero now cowers in fear of the tyrant he has become. The seed of darkness, planted by tragedy and nurtured by ambition, has blossomed into a monstrous tree, its roots spreading across the world, choking out hope and threatening to plunge the Grand Line into an age of endless darkness. The tipping point for the Straw Hat Pirates comes when Luffy makes a decision that irrevocably alters their dynamic. Driven by an insatiable thirst for power, Luffy betrays Usopp, the heart and soul of their crew. The betrayal occurs during a pivotal battle against an enemy fleet. When the dust settles, the blame falls squarely on Luffy's shoulders. Usopp confronts Luffy, accusing him of losing sight of their shared dream. The crew watches in horror as Luffy dismisses Usopp's concerns. This act of betrayal shatters the Straw Hat Pirates. With the original Straw Hat Pirates fractured, Luffy turns to building a new crew. This new crew is bound by fear and the promise of power. Luffy recruits the most ruthless pirates reveling in chaos and destruction. The first to join is Black Fang, a former captain seeking vengeance. Under Fang's guidance, the crew grows, attracting the vilest elements. The new crew is a far cry from the original Straw Hat Pirates. Gone are camaraderie and joy, replaced by cold efficiency. Each member is a weapon in Luffy's quest for dominance. Black Fang serves as Luffy's right-hand man. Luffy's new ship, the Tyrant's Fist, becomes a symbol of fear. Its black sails strike terror into all who see it. The ship's arrival signals death and destruction. The Grand Line becomes a sea of fear under Luffy's reign. As Luffy's power grows, so does his infamy. He becomes known as the Pirate Emperor. The world watches in terror as Luffy transforms into a tyrant. Luffy's transformation into the Pirate Emperor is marked by a series of brutal campaigns. His wrath is swift and merciless. The Marines are overwhelmed by Luffy's relentless onslaught. Marineford, the symbol of justice, falls to Luffy's attack. The battle is fierce, with heavy casualties on both sides. Luffy's haki cuts through the Marines' defenses. Garp leads the defense against his grandson. The battle between them is intense and heartbreaking. Despite Garp's efforts, Luffy's power proves overwhelming. The fortress falls, and with it, the symbol of marine strength. The fall of Marineford sends shockwaves through the world. The Marines are now a shattered force. Sengoku watches in despair as the organization crumbles. Luffy's victory cements his reputation as the most feared pirate. He declares himself the new ruler of the seas. The Grand Line becomes a realm of terror under Luffy's iron fist. The world holds its breath, waiting to see who will challenge the tyrant. Resistance groups begin to form, united to end Luffy's reign. But for now, the Grand Line is Luffy's domain. He rules it with an iron fist. In his quest for power, Luffy forms alliances of convenience. He allies with Crocodile and Doflamingo, each seeking mutual benefit. These alliances are fraught with tension and mistrust. Despite this, they prove effective in expanding Luffy's reach. But the alliance also sow the seeds of his downfall. How long can such a fragile empire endure? As Luffy's tyranny spreads across the Grand Line, the Marines, led by Kizaru and Smoker, prepare for a counter-offensive. Despite the fall of Marineford, their resolve remains strong. Kizaru targets Luffy's supply lines while Smoker leads daring raids. Their guerrilla tactics aim to weaken Luffy's forces. Luffy's crew proves formidable, but the Marines make gains. They reclaim key islands and disrupt supply chains. The offensive inspires hope and resistance. The Grand Line becomes a battleground for justice and tyranny. The Grand Line, reshaped by Luffy's reign, teeters on the brink of a new era. The once vibrant sea is now dominated by fear and oppression. Luffy's iron grip has left a mark that will take generations to heal. Islands are transformed into fortified strongholds. The once free peoples now toil under Luffy's enforcers. The dream of freedom is now a distant memory, but even in the darkest times, hope persists. The resistance continues to fight against Luffy's tyranny. Led by former Marines and rebel pirates, they strike against Luffy's strongholds. In the shadows, alliances are forged and betrayals plotted. Crocodile and Doflamingo bide their time, waiting to seize power. The fragile alliances now threaten to become Luffy's undoing. The world watches as the struggle for freedom reaches its climax. The Grand Line now stands as a testament to the dangers of unchecked ambition. Luffy's legacy is forever tarnished by his descent into darkness. As a new era approaches, can the world recover from Luffy's reign? The once vibrant tapestry of the Grand Line, a chaotic yet exhilarating blend of cultures and dreams, now lay in tatters. Luffy's iron fist, once clenched in youthful enthusiasm, had tightened into a vice, crushing the very life out of the world he'd vowed to conquer. Islands that once bustled with the clamor of pirates and merchants were now eerily silent, their inhabitants cowed into submission. The joyous cries of exploration were replaced by the mournful creak of gallows, a grim testament to Luffy's brutal Robiqua Warshkao, landing that detained the man in Kalao. Bedvigay's and modification, once a dance with unpredictable currents and capricious weather, was now dictated by Luffy's whims. Sea routes, once open to all who dared to chart them, were now heavily guarded, reserved for those who pledged fealty to the pirate emperor. The very essence of freedom, the thrill of the unknown, was snuffed out, replaced by a suffocating blanket of fear. Tales of Luffy's cruelty echoed across the waves, carried by the salty winds to every corner of the Grand Line. Whispers of his ruthlessness, of the brutal punishments meted out to those who dared defy him, served as a stark warning. This was not the age of exploration, of camaraderie on the high seas. This was an age of fear, where the only law was the capricious will of a tyrant. The vibrant cultures that once colored the Grand Line were now fading, their unique traditions and celebrations suppressed under the weight of Luffy's rule. The music, once lively and joyous, now carried a mournful undertone, a lament for a lost era. The very soul of the Grand Line, once a vibrant mosaic of dreams and aspirations, was slowly being crushed under the heel of tyranny. Despite the suffocating grip of Luffy's reign, the embers of defiance, however faint, refused to be extinguished. In the darkest corners of the Grand Line, in the taverns where weary travelers sought solace, and in the hushed whispers of families gathered behind bolted doors, the seeds of rebellion were being sown. Word of mouth, that ancient and reliable courier of hope, carried tales of Luffy's atrocities far and wide. Each act of cruelty, each display of tyrannical power, only served to fuel the growing discontent. What began as murmurs of dissent soon coalesced into a network of resistance, a loose alliance of those who refused to accept Luffy's rule. Former Marines, disillusioned by the corruption that had seeped into their ranks, found common cause with pirates who yearned for the old days of freedom. Civilians, their lives upended by Luffy's tyranny, took up whatever arms they could find, their courage fueled by desperation and a yearning for a better tomorrow. They operated in the shadows, their movements cloaked in secrecy, their actions swift and precise. Sabotage, espionage, and targeted strikes became their weapons of choice, their every action a testament to the indomitable spirit of those who refused to be broken. Theirs was a dangerous game, a life-or-death struggle against overwhelming odds. The whispers of rebellion, though seemingly insignificant against the storm of Luffy's power, carried within them the seeds of hope. For every whisper, every act of defiance, no matter how small, chipped away at the foundation of Luffy's reign, reminding him that true power lies not in brute force, but in the hearts and minds of the people. At the heart of this rebellion stood Roronoa. Once Luffy's first mate, Zoro now led the charge against his former captain. Betrayal fueled his resolve, transforming grief into a desire for justice. Zoro watched in horror as Luffy succumbed to power. He tried to reason with Luffy, but ambition had ensnared him. Zoro remembered the carefree boy who vowed to be free. Each plea fell on deaf ears. Zoro gathered trusted allies like Nami and Usopp. His strategic brilliance now served to dismantle Luffy's regime. They established hidden bases and recruited unbroken spirits. Their ranks swelled with hope. Former enemies united against Luffy's tyranny. Zoro's resolve was unwavering despite the danger. The memory of the Straw Hat Pirates fueled his determination. He would bring Luffy down even if it meant a final showdown. The world government, initially paralyzed by Luffy's swift and brutal rise to power, saw in the growing rebellion a chance to regain their lost footing. The five elders, their faces etched with a mixture of disdain and cunning, recognized the threat Luffy posed to their carefully constructed order. They knew they couldn't defeat him outright, not after the devastation he'd wrought upon their forces. Instead, they opted for a more insidious approach. They would manipulate the rebellion, providing them with just enough support to weaken Luffy, to bleed him dry. Once Luffy was vulnerable, they would swoop in and reclaim control, crushing both the tyrant and the rebellion in one fell swoop. Their agents, dispatched to the Grand Line under a cloak of secrecy, made contact with Zoro and his lieutenants. They offered supplies, weapons, and most importantly, information, carefully curated to fuel the flames of rebellion. They painted themselves as allies, as champions of freedom, while secretly relishing in the chaos that engulfed their enemy. The world government's involvement was a double-edged sword for the resistance. While the aid they provided was invaluable, it came at a steep price. The knowledge that they were being used, that their fight for freedom was merely a pawn in a larger, more sinister game. Zoro, ever perceptive, recognized the danger, but he saw no other option. He would use the world government's resources against them, playing their game until he could turn the tables to his advantage. The enemy of his enemy was, for now, a necessary evil. The fight for freedom, as it always does, came at a heavy price. The rebellion, though growing in strength, was constantly on the back foot, forced to make difficult choices in the face of overwhelming odds. Every victory, every act of sabotage, every life saved, was accompanied by a bitter aftertaste, a reminder of the sacrifices made along the way. The Grand Line, once a place of vibrant life, was now scarred by conflict. The once lush islands, now battlegrounds, bore the brunt of Luffy's wrath. Civilians, caught in the crossfire, paid the ultimate price for a fight they didn't choose. Those who dared to speak out against Luffy's rule were made examples of. Public executions, gruesome and merciless, were designed to instill fear, to crush any flicker of dissent. The families of those who joined the rebellion lived under constant threat, their lives hanging by a thread, bargaining chips in Luffy's twisted game. Yet amidst the suffering and loss, the spirit of resistance endured. The shared grief, the collective anger, only served to strengthen their resolve. They clung to the hope of a better future, a future free from tyranny, where the laughter of children would once again echo across the waves. The price of freedom, they learned, was etched in the lines on their faces, the scars that marked their bodies, and the memories they desperately tried to bury. It was a price they were willing to pay, for they knew that to remain silent, to bow to Luffy's rule, would be to lose their very souls. As the rebellion gained momentum, the balance of power in the Grand Line began to shift. Luffy, his grip on the world loosening, became increasingly erratic, his paranoia fueling a reign of terror that threatened to consume even his most loyal followers. The once unquestioning obedience he commanded began to waver, replaced by fear and uncertainty. The world government, sensing weakness, prepared to make their move. Their fleet, amassed in secret, waited for the opportune moment to strike. They would crush Luffy, of course, but their true objective lay in dismantling the rebellion, in ensuring that the Grand Line remained firmly under their control. Caught between two formidable forces, the fate of the Grand Line hung precariously in the balance. The world watched, holding its breath as the storm clouds gathered, the air thick with anticipation. A clash was inevitable, a final bloody confrontation that would determine the future of the world. Would Luffy, consumed by his own darkness, drag the Grand Line down with him? Or would the rebellion, fueled by the sacrifices of countless souls, manage to break free from the shackles of both tyranny and manipulation? The answer, lost somewhere in the chaos and bloodshed, held the key to a new dawn, a chance to rebuild a world shattered by ambition and greed. One thing was certain: the Grand Line, forever changed by Luffy's reign, would never be the same. Our palpable tension gripped the Grand Line. The air, heavy with the stench of salt and impending doom, crackled with anticipation. Whispers of rebellion echoed across the sea, reaching even the most isolated islands. Luffy, holed up in his fortress, felt the shift in power, like a tremor before an earthquake. Gone was the boisterous laughter that once filled the going merry, replaced by an eerie silence. His new crew, bound by fear and ambition, moved like phantoms. Even Black Fang, his first mate, seemed ill at ease, Constantly scanning the horizon, news of the approaching world government fleet had reached Luffy's ears. He knew they were here for his head, for the blood he'd spilled. For the first time since setting sail, a flicker of doubt ran down his spine. He'd tasted absolute power, but now confronted the emptiness that gnawed at his soul. The echoes of laughter, of shared dreams and loyalty, now mocked him. As Luffy stood at the precipice of his final battle, memories flooded his mind. Shanks, his grin, the weight of the straw hat, a bond shattered by ambition. His crew, faces etched with fear, loyalty, and betrayal. Usopp, eyes filled with tears, friendship severed. Nami, dreams crushed under his tyranny. Zoro, disappointment burning hotter than any devil fruit power. Each memory, a shard of a shattered mirror, joy, camaraderie, replaced by cold ambition. Declared war on the world government, fist raised in defiance. Painted himself as a liberator, hero morphing into the villain. Storm clouds gathered. Luffy questioned everything. Was it worth it? The power, the control, the fear. The final battle erupted with a fury that shook the very foundations of the Grand Line. The world government fleet, a relentless tide of iron and gunpowder, clashed with Luffy's forces. A ragtag armada of fearsome pirates and coerced allies, held together by the fragile bonds of ambition and desperation. Cannons roared, their thunderous booms echoing across the waves, each blast a testament to the futility of war, the indiscriminate destruction that consumed both the innocent and the guilty. Ships, once majestic symbols of freedom and exploration, were reduced to splintered wreckage, their burning hulks a testament to the fleeting nature of power. At the heart of the maelstrom, Luffy, his haki blazing with a malevolent energy, cut a swathe through his enemies. His attacks, once fueled by a joyous recklessness, were now imbued with a cold, calculated brutality. He fought like a demon possessed, his every move a testament to the dark power he'd embraced. But for every ship he sank, for every marine he struck down, a new enemy seemed to rise in their place. He was outnumbered, outmaneuvered, his forces slowly but surely being whittled away by the relentless assault. And then, through the smoke and chaos, he saw him. Zoro, his gaze as steady as the steel he wielded, stood atop a burning ship, a beacon of defiance amidst the carnage. Their eyes met, and in that instant the years melted away, the weight of their shattered bond a tangible thing between them. The clash between Luffy and Zoro was a whirlwind of steel and fury, a dance of death on a stage of fire and blood. Their blades, once wielded side by side, now clashed with desperate intensity, each strike a bitter reminder of their shattered bond. Zoro fought with the righteous fury of a man betrayed. He'd watched his captain descend into darkness, and he knew he had to stop Luffy. Luffy, fueled by rage, found himself on the defensive. Zoro's attacks were relentless, each blow a hammer to Luffy's defenses. For the first time, Luffy felt fear. He sacrificed everything for power, breaking every bond. Now he saw the emptiness of his victory. The world fell silent as they locked eyes, blades crossed. Luffy understood the true price of power. It was measured in shattered bonds and betrayal. The world held its breath as the dust settled. The battle, once a raging inferno, had dwindled to isolated skirmishes. The world government fleet, decimated, had withdrawn. On the blood-soaked deck, two figures lay amidst the wreckage. One, still and unmoving, his straw hat beside him. The other, battered and bruised, slowly rose to his feet. Zoro stared down at his fallen captain, emotion swirling. There was sorrow for the friend he'd lost. There was anger at the path Luffy had chosen. But above all, a profound sense of loss. He sheathed his sword, the metallic clang echoing. The Grand Line, scarred but not broken, would need time to heal. The world government, their forces depleted, would think twice before exerting their will again. The Straw Hats, their bonds tested but unbroken, would pick up the pieces, their spirits tempered by loss but not extinguished. The Grand Line still called to them, a promise of new adventures. The world, forever changed by Luffy's rise and fall, would never be the same. But in the aftermath, a fragile hope bloomed, a testament to the enduring spirit of adventure. The echoes of battle faded into the mournful cries of gulls circling overhead. The Grand Line, once choked by the suffocating grip of tyranny, drew a hesitant breath, the salty air tinged with the metallic scent of blood and the promise of rain. The reign of Pirate Emperor Luffy, a reign born of sorrow and twisted by ambition, had reached its inevitable end, leaving behind a trail of shattered lives and a world grappling with the aftermath. The legacy of Monkey D. Luffy, the boy who'd set sail with laughter on his lips and dreams of freedom in his heart, would forever be stained by the darkness that had consumed him. The hero who'd promised to become the king of the pirates, to usher in an era of boundless joy and adventure, had become the very thing he swore to fight, a tyrant who ruled through fear and oppression. The world remembered his strength, the raw power that could shake the heavens and shatter mountains. They whispered tales of his ruthless, of that fear that had clung to him like a shroud, turning friend against friend, brother against brother. But beneath the weight of his infamy, overshadowed by the darkness that had consumed him, flickered a faint, almost forgotten light. For there were those who remembered the boy who'd smiled too brightly, who'd charged into danger with reckless abandon, his laughter echoing across the waves. They remembered the captain who'd stood by his crew, who'd valued loyalty above all else, who'd dreamed of a world where everyone could choose their own destiny. The Grand Line, scarred by Luffy's reign, began healing. Islands once fearful came back to life, inhabitants emerging with hope and trepidation. Whispers of rebellion became open declarations of self-determination. The world government retreated, their authority shaken. The balance of power shifted, creating a vacuum for new players. The Straw Hats, scattered by the storm, carried their shared history. Would they reunite to chart a new course through the Grand Line? Would they honor Luffy's memory by creating a world of freedom? The future, as vast as the Grand Line, held endless possibilities. Luffy's legacy was a cautionary tale and a testament to the human spirit.